Taylor Swift released her 11th studio album today, The Tortured Poets Department. She's been releasing an album almost every 2 years since her debut in 2006. And she re-recorded and released 4 of them during the pandemic. That was related to a legal dispute with her record label, which is why she re-recorded them. Right off the top, I can't claim any special knowledge of this superstar. I don't know her music that well, but I've been aware of her albums coming out over the years. I know she began as something of a country darling and teen idol, which, to be honest, was part of the reason I didn't really follow her music early on. However, she's a cultural icon now that can hardly be overlooked. I went and saw the Eras Tour film in the theater. It was a spectacle for the show she put on, as well as the sheer number of fans singing along to all her songs. And the Miss Americana documentary on Netflix describes how she's reinvented herself a few times throughout her musical career. It also shows her drive and ambition, hardly ever taking any time off. Taylor Swift has all kinds of awards. She's got 14 Grammy Awards, including 4 Album of the Year, which is the most by any artist, and tons of American Music Awards and Billboard Music Awards, among others. She's sold millions of albums worldwide and 78 billion streams of her music as of 2021. I thought I'd open this up because a lot of people consume their music these days streaming, and so you don't get this, and this is my old style way of doing things. Got the case there, that's the back. So the cover, and then there's pictures inside as well as the lyrics and all the credits, and that's, I'll say, why I appreciate getting a CD, for looking at the credits and who's involved. I would do things like in the early 90s, when Bryan Adams' Waking Up the Neighbors album came out. I noticed that Mickey Curry was the drummer on most of those, and it was an album that was among the first that had DDD, digitally recorded, mixed, and mastered on it. But then I noticed that when I got the Tom Cochrane Mad Mad World album, Mickey Curry was the drummer on there as well. You don't normally get that in streaming services. Usually it's just the song, and sometimes people don't even get the full content of the album. They just get 1 or 2 songs or their favorites off an album. So that's part of the reason I picked these up, because I want to sort of hear the context in which the albums were written. There's a picture inside, and a picture of some handwritten lyrics as well. And you can probably find all this stuff online, digital versions of those pictures and so on. What you might find as well, but maybe wouldn't know to look for it, is a poem by Stevie Nicks. And the poem says, "For tea and me." And I'll just read a few lines of it. He was in love with her, or at least she thought so. She was broken-hearted. Maybe he was too. Neither of them knew. She was way too hot to handle. He was way too high to try. He couldn't even see her. He wouldn't open his eyes. She was on her way to the stars. He didn't say goodbye. And it goes on. From Stevie Nicks. The Tortured Poets Department album is described as a synth pop album with stylings of rock and folk. Its production incorporates synths, piano, and guitar. The subject matter delves into Swift's psyche, introspecting on her public and private lives. Critics have described the album as a cathartic and self-conscious project blending sorrow and humor. And from what I've listened to of it so far, and I've listened to most of the album, that's true. It's got tons of synthesized sounds on it, slower kinds of tempos, with, I would say, somewhat melancholy kinds of feeling to it. And then certainly there's some strong emotion, I would say even some anger that comes through in that. And it includes collaborations with Post Malone and Florence and the Machine. So, why is a pastor talking about this pop icon and new album? I'll say that I appreciate what I've heard about her religious and political views. Taylor has said that she was raised a Christian, but that she felt real Christian values were not being upheld by current lawmakers who claimed otherwise. The Miss Americana documentary captured the moments in 2018 in which Taylor first began to speak up about her political beliefs, specifically when she decided to publicly endorse Democratic candidate Phil Bredesen in that year's Tennessee Senate race, where he faced off against conservative Republican Marsha Blackburn. Taylor said in the documentary, "I can't see another commercial and see Marsha Blackburn disguising these policies behind the words Tennessee Christian values. Those aren't Tennessee Christian values. I live in Tennessee. I'm a Christian. That's not what we stand for." The singer-songwriter's beliefs appear to differ from the more traditional Christian values. And I would say that when they say traditional Christian values, what they're referring to is Christian nationalism and the more vocal ones that are sensational and get into the news, but aren't necessarily what Jesus Christ was about. So the singer-songwriter's beliefs appear to differ from the more traditional, I would say conservative or restrictive Christian values. Mainly this includes Taylor's support of the LGBTQ+ community, as well as support for abortion access. As a pop icon and somebody who's a celebrity in the news, she has had her history of relationships followed through the years, as celebrities often do, and that has put pressure on those relationships, I'm sure. I hear in her poetry and lyrics journeys through heartbreak, the hurt and anger that can be present in those times, and that certainly comes through in this new album. I think she resonates with so many for that reason, and the vulnerability she shows in sharing as she does. Of course, with lyrics there is poetic license, but the emotion that is shared evidently touches people's hearts. Again, she is a young person with a ton of cultural and financial clout. She's a successful musician, and she's only 34 years old. She'll be 35 in December of this year. She was born in 1989. And she just became a billionaire a few months ago. And she is the first musician to reach the milestone of being a billionaire solely from songwriting and performing. That's impressive. She's a successful young woman. As someone in her 30s with 11 albums under her belt, and for comparison, Pearl Jam just put out their 12th studio album, and Taylor Swift wasn't even 2 years old when Pearl Jam's first album was released. And as someone who has reached a comparable level of wealth as the richest Beatle, one can pretty easily say that she's accomplished everything and more any young musician might set out to do. And her progressive values can help shape society. She's known for having been responsible for thousands of young voters who signed up to vote when she encouraged them to on a social media post in September of 2023, just a few months ago. So take a listen. Maybe take a look at what she's posting on her social media. And pay attention to the support she shows for 2S LGBTQIA people and access to abortion and democratic institutions. She encourages people to have a voice. It's a good use of her celebrity, and she shows care for all.